Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. Before I get on out of here, I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitl Clark.
Updates in the ongoing WNBA CBA negotiations, and there is a brand new wrinkle to the storyline as it's been reported that there is a Saudi-backed basketball league that will be kicking off next season, and this could truly change everything.
Hey, is this enough to entice Caitl Clark? $20 million deal, 30, 40, $50 million deals.
The WNBA just lost Caitl Clark. That's not a headline from the future. That's the trajectory the league locked itself into the moment it decided jealousy was more important than protecting its biggest asset. Right now, as you're watching this, the sports world is on fire. Stephen A. Smith confirmed it live on national television. Fans are losing their minds across every platform. Media insiders are scrambling to get ahead of the story. And somewhere in a very quiet, very expensive boardroom, the Saudi Public Investment Fund has reportedly written a check so large it could swallow the entire WNBA's budget and barely feel it. We're talking about a $1 billion disruption that could pull Caitl Clark and Sophie Cunningham out of the league entirely. But here's the thing nobody is talking about yet. We still don't know if Clark says yes. And that answer? That answer changes the entire landscape of professional women's sports forever. Stay locked in, because we're breaking down every angle of this story right now. Nobody saw this coming from that direction. While the entire sports media ecosystem spent months debating whether the WNBA was treating Caitl Clark fairly, whether the fouls were too hard, whether the snubs were too deliberate, whether the politics were too petty, Saudi Arabia was watching, quietly, patiently, the way the world's most powerful sovereign wealth fund tends to operate before it moves. And now it's moving. Reports have surfaced that the Saudi Public Investment Fund, the same financial engine behind LIV Golf, the same organization that transformed European football and redefined Formula One's commercial landscape, has set its sights on women's basketball, not as a charity case, not as a PR exercise, as a calculated, aggressive, strategic acquisition play. And according to reports now circulating across major sports media outlets, the two primary targets on that list are Caitl Clark and Sophie Cunningham. Let that sink in for a second. This isn't a shoe deal conversation. This isn't an endorsement package or a Netflix documentary negotiation. Reports suggest we're talking about offers in the range of $20 million, $30 million, potentially climbing as high as $50 million and beyond, to anchor an entirely new women's basketball league backed by a fund that holds over $700 billion in assets. Stephen A. Smith didn't just report this story, he validated it live on television in front of millions of viewers with the kind of conviction he reserves for moments when he knows the information is real. The league has been warned before. Smith himself was the one doing the warning. He told the WNBA repeatedly, "Protect your golden goose, or someone else will come along and buy the whole farm." Well, the farm is officially for sale, and the Saudis have already shown up with cash in hand. What makes this moment different from every other outside investment rumor that floats around professional sports is the specificity. This isn't vague speculation about some mystery investor. This is a named fund with a documented history of executing exactly this kind of play, targeting two specific players with documented market value in a league that has spent the better part of a year proving it cannot protect or properly compensate its own biggest star. The conditions for a hostile takeover have never been more perfectly aligned, and the person at the center of all of it is still, technically, playing for $76,000 a year. For months, Stephen A. Smith was the loudest voice in the room. While other analysts danced around the uncomfortable truth, trying to frame the treatment of Caitl Clark as competitive intensity or veteran initiation, Smith called it exactly what it was: jealousy. Small-minded, career-threatening jealousy from a league that had spent decades grinding for relevance and suddenly found itself in the shadow of a 22-year-old rookie from Indiana. He said it clearly. He said it repeatedly. He said it on national television without flinching. The WNBA was mishandling the greatest gift the league had ever received. He highlighted the flagrant fouls that referees inexplicably swallowed. He called out the Kennedy Carter hip check for what it was, not a basketball play, but a message. He exposed the absurdity of Clark flying commercial, while the league marketed her face on every promotional campaign it ran. He pointed out the Olympic snub with the kind of righteous fury that only comes from knowing you're completely right. And every single time, the league's response was essentially silence. But something shifted in Smith's commentary recently. The tone moved from criticism to something closer to prophecy. He stopped saying the WNBA needed to fix its approach and started saying the window for fixing it was closing fast. He started framing it not as a problem to be solved, but as a consequence already in motion. His exact words carried the weight of someone who had seen the internal conversations reflected in the public behavior and knew where the road was leading. He reminded anyone who would listen that markets correct themselves, that you cannot suppress a player whose market value sits in the hundreds of millions by paying her $76,000 and hoping she stays out of loyalty, that the WNBA's elder guard had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They thought they could use peer pressure and physical intimidation to teach Clark patience. What they actually did was teach her that the league didn't deserve her patience. Smith's confirmation of the Saudi investment rumors isn't just him reporting a story. It's the "I told you so" moment he's been building toward for over a year. He warned them that disrespect has a price. The invoice has apparently arrived. Let's put the financial reality on the table, because once you see these numbers side by side, the entire debate collapses. Caitlin Clark signed her WNBA rookie contract under the league's strict collective bargaining agreement. 4 years, totaling approximately $338,000. In her first season alone, her base salary came out to roughly $76,000. To contextualize that figure, there are backup NBA players who earn that amount every single week of the regular season. Players who rarely see the court, who most fans couldn't name if their life depended on it, earning Clark's annual salary as a weekly deposit. The WNBA's standard defense has always been revenue. The league reportedly operated at a financial loss for 27 consecutive years. Players are paid what the economics allow, the argument goes, and until the money comes in, the salaries stay low. It's a coherent argument on paper. The problem is that Caitlin Clark dismantled it in approximately 90 days. From the moment she was drafted, the numbers started moving in directions the league hadn't seen in decades. Attendance records shattered. Television viewership numbers climbed to heights that hadn't been reached since the league's founding era. Jersey sales exploded. Sponsorship inquiries flooded the front office. Broadcasts that would have previously pulled modest ratings were suddenly drawing audiences that embarrassed certain NBA markets. The revenue argument, the one the league had leaned on for nearly 3 decades, evaporated the moment Clark put on a jersey. And yet the salary didn't move. The contract remained locked. The player generating millions in new revenue continued collecting a paycheck that, as Smith pointed out, barely covers the cost of renting an apartment in most major American cities. That disconnect between the value being created and the compensation being offered is precisely the gap that outside investors are now racing to fill. The Saudis didn't create this opportunity. The WNBA built it for them, one underpaid paycheck at a time. If you want to understand exactly how this plays out, you don't need to imagine it. You just need to remember what happened to golf. For decades, the PGA Tour operated as the undisputed authority in professional golf. They controlled the schedule. They controlled the purses. They controlled the narrative around who was a legitimate champion and who wasn't. Players complained about the structure for years, about the revenue split, about the travel demands, about the way the organization treated its talent versus its bottom line. And every year, those complaints went largely unaddressed, because where else were the players going to go? Then the Saudis showed up. LIV Golf didn't ask the PGA Tour for permission. It didn't try to negotiate a partnership or propose a collaborative framework. It went directly to the players. It offered Dustin Johnson numbers that made his PGA earnings look like a rounding error. It handed Phil Mickelson a reported $200 million simply to join and lend the venture credibility. It promised guaranteed money, fewer events, private travel, and a format designed around entertainment rather than tradition. The media erupted. Critics called it sports washing. Pundits questioned the moral character of the players who signed. The outrage was loud, immediate, and sustained. And then, within 2 years, the PGA Tour was sitting across the table from the Saudis trying to negotiate a merger. The players took the money, the fans followed the talent. The moral outrage faded. The generational wealth endured. That is the blueprint being applied to women's basketball right now with surgical precision. The WNBA has the same structural vulnerabilities the PGA Tour had: a captive talent pool, suppressed compensation, and a belief that institutional loyalty would outweigh financial reality. The Saudis have already proven that belief is wrong once. They're betting it's wrong again. The difference this time is the speed. The WNBA doesn't have the PGA Tour's century of tradition to slow the process down. Women's basketball's modern commercial era is essentially built around the last 18 months of Caitlin Clark highlights. Pull Clark out of that picture, and the foundation shifts overnight. The Clark piece of this story is obvious, but Sophie Cunningham's reported inclusion is where the strategy reveals its real sophistication. If the goal were simply to acquire the best player in women's basketball, the target list would look different. Breanna Stewart carries championship pedigree. A'ja Wilson carries MVP hardware and a defensive reputation that commands respect across the sport. Either of those players would signal to the basketball world that a new league was serious about quality. So why are reports pointing to Cunningham alongside Clark rather than one of those established names? The answer lives entirely in the metrics that sports investors actually care about. Not box scores, but eyeballs, clicks, and cultural penetration. Sophie Cunningham has built something that most professional athletes never crack: a genuine, organic social media presence that extends beyond the sport's existing fan base. Her personality is magnetic. Her brand is identifiable. She represents a style of play and a personal energy that casual sports fans connect with immediately. The kind of viewer who might not follow the WNBA standings but will absolutely watch a highlight reel if Cunningham is in it. Advertisers understand this. The camera finds her for a reason. She is, in the language of modern sports marketing, must-watch content. Paired with Clark, the dynamic is almost too clean. You have the generational talent, the pure scorer, the historic player, the one who casual fans are tuning in specifically to watch. And alongside her, you have the gritty, charismatic, tough-as-nails personality who makes every moment feel urgent and entertaining. Clark draws the audience in. Cunningham keeps them there. That combination, in a tour-based international format hitting cities like London, Dubai, Tokyo, and New York, doesn't just compete with the WNBA. It makes the WNBA look like the minor league version of the same sport. Stephen A. Smith has referenced this framework repeatedly, that stars who sell tickets are the only thing that actually matters in professional sports infrastructure. Clark sells tickets. Cunningham sells personality. Together, they sell a league. Here's the part of this story that the WNBA's leadership really doesn't want examined too closely. If this were a league that had embraced Caitlin Clark from day one, the Saudi offer, regardless of the dollar amount, would be a much harder sell. Loyalty is a real force in professional sports. Players stay in organizations that treat them right even when the money elsewhere is better. That's documented across every major league in the world. But loyalty requires a foundation, and the foundation here was cracked before Clark ever played a regular season game. Diana Taurasi's ESPN comments during the Final Four were framed publicly as veteran wisdom, a respected champion preparing a young player for the reality of professional competition. But the tone carried something else underneath it. It sounded territorial. It sounded like someone warning a newcomer that the existing hierarchy wasn't going anywhere without a fight. And the games that followed validated that, read entirely. Clark was grabbed, shoved, elbowed, and hammered throughout her rookie season in ways that drew widespread attention precisely because the officiating refused to match the contact level with the foul calls. The Kennedy Carter play became a cultural flashpoint not just because of what happened on the court, but because of what it represented: an established player delivering a physical message to the league's newest star while the institutional structure of the league offered no meaningful response. Stephen A. Smith didn't just react to that play, he turned it into a referendum on the league's priorities. He asked where the teammates were. He asked why the front office wasn't louder. He asked why the commissioner's office seemed more interested in managing optics than protecting its most valuable asset. Nobody gave him a satisfying answer, because there wasn't one. Then remember Ice Cube's offer. Right in the middle of the season's chaos, the Big Three founder publicly offered Clark $5 million to play 8 3-on-3 games. $5 million for 8 games. That figure alone exceeds what Clark will earn across her entire rookie WNBA contract. She turned it down at the time, and the reason she gave was clear. She wanted to compete at the highest level, win a championship, and prove herself in the league she grew up watching. That was her dream. That was her stated goal. But that was before the full weight of the hazing settled in. Before the Olympic exclusion made it undeniable that the veteran leadership of the sport was actively working to limit her platform rather than amplify it. Before she realized that the league's response to her mistreatment was going to be measured and cautious rather than immediate and protective. The Saudi offer doesn't just represent money. It represents an escape from an environment that made its hostility toward her clear from the opening tip. When you can leave a workplace that disrespects you, travel the world in private luxury, earn 50 times your current salary, and still play the sport you love, at what point does staying become something other than loyalty? At what point does it just become stubbornness? Commissioner Cathy Engelbert's office is staring down a scenario that could unravel years of carefully built momentum in a single press conference. The timing of these Saudi rumors could not be more damaging from the league's perspective. The WNBA is currently in the process of negotiating what insiders have described as a transformational media rights deal. Networks like Disney, Amazon Prime Video, and NBC are being asked to commit billions of dollars to broadcasting rights packages, and the entire pitch is built around one thing: growth. Specifically, the kind of explosive, record-shattering, demographic-expanding growth that started the moment Caitlin Clark was drafted. The league's negotiating team walks into those network boardrooms with attendance graphs trending upward, viewership numbers that haven't been seen in 20 years, and a cultural conversation around women's basketball that has never been louder. All of that data has Clark's fingerprints on every single data point. The networks aren't buying the WNBA. They're buying the Clark era of the WNBA. Those are two very different products, and the league knows it. If Clark announces she's departing for a competing venture, especially one backed by the financial firepower being reported, that entire negotiating position collapses. Networks paying billions for broadcasting rights are paying for audiences, and the audience the WNBA is promising is the audience that follows Caitlin Clark. Without her in a WNBA jersey, the ratings projections change. The sponsorship interest recalibrates. The cultural conversation shifts platform, and the billions being offered in those media rights negotiations shrink accordingly. Here is the irony that Stephen A. Smith has been pointing toward for months, now crystallizing in real time. The veterans who made Clark's early career unnecessarily difficult, who delivered physical messages on the court, who cultivated a hostile social environment around her arrival, who resented the attention and the resources flowing in her direction. Those same veterans are the ones whose paychecks depend on the media rights deal staying intact. The new collective bargaining agreement being negotiated right now, the one that could finally bring player salaries into something resembling a reasonable range, is funded by the commercial momentum Clark created. If she walks, the money walks with her. Every player who rolled their eyes at the Clark coverage, every veteran who made her feel unwelcome, every front office decision that prioritized institutional comfort over protecting the franchise player, all of them potentially lose their improved contracts because of the environment they helped create. It is, as Smith implied on air, the most expensive form of karma in recent sports history. Every time the Saudi Public Investment Fund enters a sports conversation, the moral argument arrives about 30 seconds behind it. Live Golf taught us exactly how this cycle runs. The moment the first players signed their deals, the commentary shifted immediately to human rights records, government-linked ownership structures, and the ethics of allowing sovereign wealth to purchase sporting credibility. The term sports washing became the default framing for every Saudi sports investment, deployed with the certainty of someone who has never had to calculate whether their employer's values were worth more than their family's financial security. The same conversation is already warming up around women's basketball, and it will get significantly louder if Clark's name appears on a contract. Critics will question the optics, advocates will raise legitimate concerns about the human rights context. Social media will divide into predictable camps within hours of any announcement. This is all coming, and pretending otherwise would be naive. But here's the part of the conversation that tends to get buried under the moral outrage. The players being targeted for these offers are women who have spent their entire professional careers being told that their sport simply cannot afford to pay them what they're worth, that the economics don't support it, that patience is required, that the league is investing in infrastructure that will eventually, someday, raise the ceiling for everyone. These are women who have watched their male counterparts earn incomprehensibly larger salaries for playing the same sport at a similar competitive level, and have been told to be grateful for what they have. Stephen A. Smith makes this point without apology. Morality doesn't pay the rent. History backs him up. The LIV golf controversy was deafening for roughly 6 months, and then it became background noise as fans simply adjusted to watching great golfers play golf in a different context. Ronaldo joining the Saudi Professional League generated weeks of think pieces and cultural hand-wringing. Today, his matches draw enormous viewership numbers, and the debate has moved on entirely. Fans follow talent. They follow story. They follow competition. If Caitl, Clark, and Sophie Cunningham are playing basketball at the highest level of intensity and production in front of global audiences in major cities, the moral conversation will fade into the background the way it always does. The outrage is loud. The entertainment is louder. And for female athletes who have never been compensated anywhere close to their actual value, the choice between principled poverty and financial security is not the comfortable moral dilemma that comfortable commentators make it sound like. In professional sports, silence is its own form of communication. When a rumor emerges that is genuinely baseless, when a report surfaces that has no foundation in reality and poses no real threat to anyone involved, the standard response from agents and representatives is swift and decisive. A spokesperson issues a brief statement. An agent makes a call to a trusted reporter. The story gets categorized as speculation within 24 to 48 hours, and the news cycle moves on. This is how sports business operates when the answer is simply no. That is not what has happened here. Caitl Clark's representation has not issued a denial. Sophie Cunningham's camp has not moved to shut the story down. Nobody connected to either player has gone on the record to dismiss the Saudi League reports as fiction. And crucially, Stephen A. Smith, who has more sources inside professional sports than virtually any other media personality currently working, is not walking anything back. He is not softening his language or adding cautious qualifiers. He is leaning into the story with the energy of someone who believes the core of it is accurate. In sports negotiation dynamics, this kind of sustained silence from a player's camp typically signals one of two things. Either the player is genuinely in active discussions and legal constraints prevent any public comment until an agreement is finalized, or the reports are being allowed to breathe deliberately, used as leverage against the existing league to force a better offer before any final decision is made. Both interpretations are significant. Both change the power dynamic between Clark and the WNBA, and both suggest that the era of Clark quietly accepting her situation without options is finished. The timing adds another layer. The WNBA season carries enormous physical demands. Travel schedules are grueling. Recovery windows are narrow. As any season progresses, the contrast between those conditions and the reported luxury infrastructure of a Saudi-backed tour model becomes a more vivid daily reality for the players involved. Every commercial flight, every budget hotel, every moment the gap between effort and compensation makes itself felt. The silence from Clark's camp gets louder in that context. It suggests awareness of options. It suggests patience of a different kind. Not the patience of someone waiting for the system to reward them, but the patience of someone who knows they hold the stronger hand and is waiting for the right moment to play it. What we are watching unfold in real time is not simply a contract dispute or a business negotiation. It is the fault line of an entire era cracking open. The WNBA was handed something rare and irreplaceable, a player capable of transforming the commercial and cultural trajectory of the entire league within a single season. By every measurable standard, Caitlin Clark delivered exactly that. The attendance numbers confirm it. The television ratings confirm it. The sponsorship dollars, the jersey sales, the media rights valuations, all of it confirms that something historic arrived in 2024, and it wore number 22. What the league did with that gift will be studied in sports business programs for years. Stephen A. Smith saw it clearly from the beginning. He said, protect her, compensate her, and embrace the moment. The league chose a different path. And now, reportedly, the consequences of that choice are sitting in a boardroom somewhere with $1 billion price tag attached. The Sophie Cunningham connection tells you this isn't improvised. This is structured. This is a full franchise vision being assembled around talent the WNBA undervalued and underpaid. If this reported Saudi league becomes reality, if Clark and Cunningham step out of their current contracts and into a global tour format backed by limitless capital, the WNBA doesn't just lose 2 players. It loses the argument that it was ever the right place for the sport's biggest stars to be. The veterans who made Clark's arrival uncomfortable may have authored their own financial undoing. The irony is almost cinematic. Now the question isn't whether the sports world is paying attention. Every fan, analyst, and executive is locked in. The question is the one nobody can answer yet. Does she sign? And when that answer comes, nothing about women's professional basketball will look the same on the other side of it. What's your read? Does Clark stay and fight for the league? Or does she take the money and change the game entirely?